What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Questionable Commentary, featuring myself, Brad, otherwise known as Bradsifer, and Alex from the Pioneer Perspective. Say hello, Alex.
Hello.
So, like last time, we're doing this again. Random lobbies in MTGO, Pioneer practice rooms, and we have a pretty cool one. And I don't have anything else to really say. Alex, you got anything before we go into it?
No, let's go. I see the titles of the decks. I'm excited.
All right. Well, we have a wonderful matchup here, being Golgari Lands and Boros Heroic. Now, Boros Heroic is a deck that we've seen a lot in Pioneer lately. Has a pretty good meta share, really good matchup against mono green. Very nice low to the ground aggressive deck. Obviously being piloted by Sir Ian Enemy. And then Mr. Aquilian 1990 is going to be on Golgari Lands. They both reveal Giganta, the wonderful companion in this format, which is actually pretty much the most played companion, right?
Yeah, it's become like the Lurrus thing, where whenever your modern match started, like 99% of the time, both players popped up with Lurrus of the Dream Den revealed from, you know?
Yeah, and we see a favorite hoplite on turn 1. And then we see Forest from Mr. Aquilian and an Elvish Reclaimer. And for those of you who don't know, Elvish Reclaimer is a 1/2 elf that says you can pay 2, sack a land, or sack 2 lands, and then search your library for a land put on the battlefield. And if you have 3 or more lands in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2. So it becomes a 3/4. But we're not going to see that one much longer, with Reckless Rage coming in and just saying bye, which is just such a good removal spell in these kind of decks. And another hoplite. So Boros Heroic doing Boros Heroic things, just coming in very aggressively.
Yeah, Reckless Rage being like the key card in this deck, being this deck's dominance is like for a while, and I think it's still true. It's like this deck is as good as Reckless Rage is in the meta.
I agree.
I will say it's gotten a lot of power recently, and like a couple new cards like Ancestral Anger, Luminator Virtuoso and stuff. So there have been like additions now that the deck just like stands on its own a little bit more, and it's not as reliant on like abusing Reckless Rage. But still, like if Reckless Rage is somehow not a good card in your meta, which like how would 1 mana deal 4 not be? But then we would see the deck being a lot weaker. But with this card being good, and probably being good for the foreseeable future, this deck's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and we see how Mr. Aquilian take care of one of the favorite hoplites, the buffed one with a Abrupt Decay, which has actually fallen out of favor a little bit in Pioneer. Mostly, I would think because Golgari and those colors are falling out of favor a bit. But then, of course, we see a Master Swiftspear with wonderful prowess, a Homestead Courage, putting a counter on hoplite and getting 2 counters now, and swinging in, getting them down to 13. So still being the aggressor, still have the Golgari player on their back foot. I can't keep saying Mr. Aquilian. It's a weird name to keep saying.
I think
and we see a Ramanov Excavator.
It's very obvious that the last card in the Boros player's hand is a protection spell, or at least they're very good at faking it otherwise. That one card left in hand didn't go for the Homestead Courage, which would give them 2 triggers here. So the last card, probably something like a God's Willing, or Fight as One could be one that's sometimes used. But, you know, obviously a good decision, because you're really faking it quite well. And if you're not faking it, given that you have 3 lands up, your 1 mana spell up, you know, there's not much of a reason to go for it in the previous turn, because you were probably not going to spend all your mana the next turn anyway. You could have spent it on buying a Giganta, but that's a very late game thing to be looking at. But they are using it now, and that makes me think
they were trying to think
they were
about
faking it.
Yeah, but they kind of gave it a think with the Homestead Courage, because they won open mana. They're seeing if they could pump the Swiftspear and then just swing in over the Ramanov and get more damage, which they do, go to 7. So that's a pretty big deal here.
Yeah, I'm just a little surprised.
Giganta to hand,
because you're very well. You're faking, probably faking the protection spell in the Dreadhorde. Faking the protection spell before. Now you play a Dreadhorde Arcanist, which is very much a card you would want to protect. Which I mean, the clock's ticking up, but I'm surprised to see this on the Hoplite, because now if the Arcanist attacks, flashes back Reckless Rage, your blocker dies. So
Yeah.
you were kind of going to take a lot of damage anyway. What you can hope for is you kill the Dreadhorde Arcanist, and if your opponent doesn't draw a spell, that means the Swift Spear is a 2/3, and now you just have a clean, like, block. So you would probably be taking less damage anyway, but now he's just gonna Reckless Rage, and, you know, game's probably over at this point, unless the Golgari player is sitting on some sort of sweeper. You know, if they untap, play a land, play Shadow's Verdict or something, this game is far from over. But not looking very
we
good
see
so far.
Virtuoso come down, best card in the deck. Another Hoplite, Reckless Rage, taking care of that. They're going to get in 4 damage here, so they'll go down to 3. It's not a very good place to be at when you're facing 4 creatures that can all be pumped.
I mean, this is the thing going against this deck, though. If this is, like, land Verdict... Oh, it can't be Verdict because Gigantha. But if this could have been, like, land and some
Dread
sort of sweeper...
Presence. Ooh.
Do we see, like, a Fable? We see a Fable
And there's
passage.
a Fable. That comes in as a swamp because we have Urborg. So it's
Yeah,
going
and
to
it
pop
does
off on
2 damage to
Hoplite.
any target. So kill the
Gaining
Hoplite,
2
gain
life.
2. Now they can do the
Then
same
probably
on
kill
the
the Virtuoso. It's cool they can go grab a forest here, and it still is a swamp for it.
Yeah, next turn they
this
have
is
the Field of
different
Ruin.
now.
So they can get themselves 2 triggers next turn. If there's no basic mountains in the deck, which I doubt they could be taking them off red, but I'm going to assume there is. Still, like, if there's like a good spell like an Ancestral Rage, Ancestral Anger, it's fine, but it doesn't appear to be the case.
Yep, they got nothing. But they're not adding Gigantha to hand, so that must be a protection spell that they're holding on to. And another
Or they're
Dread
faking it.
Presence.
Oh.
And an Evolving Wilds. So what? They're going to double pip? Yeah, double pip Swift Spear here. Let's see if that's a protection spell. And it's not. So why would you not add Gigantha to hand?
Maybe faking a removal spell, a protection spell, but they've done it before and then sort of given up the facade. So it's a little. I mean, if they don't have a land, you know you're not playing Gigantha next turn anyway. So maybe that's why you're just trying to fake that you've got something, because there's no point in putting Gigantha in your hand per se.
Another Arcanist, but there's really nothing in the graveyard for them to grab with Arcanist. And then there's a land, and they just scoop it up.
Okay, Dread Presence.
Wow. Now, I mean, that's a card we don't see, like, ever. Like, I haven't even seen it in Standard. But really cool card. Really nice interaction with Urborg and, like, things like Fable Passage and Evolving Wild. That's sweet. And it got them back from 3 life. We thought that Golgari was just dead to rights.
Yeah, like, obviously trying to think of, like, it could have been something like a sweeper, but this, for all intents and purposes, is a sweeper. Probably took out the 2 scariest creatures on the board, creates a blocker that's big enough for the 3rd one, and pads your life total to a point where you don't care if the 4th one hits you. So this could have basically been a board wipe, but then better, because it sticks around, got the Evolving Wild. So one of these Arcanists was dying, another land drop, another Arcanist was dying. So yeah, kind of hopeless from this point.
And a big thing that we saw, like, where Heroic can have issues is, like, they had Homestead Courage and stuff. That's fine. And Reckless Rage, cool. But they didn't draw into any the draw spells. The Ancestors,
no
Anger.
no Defiant Strike.
Exactly. Which, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to kind of pop off. Like, Virtuoso, Illuminator Virtuoso. You want to kind of pop off with, like, the connives, the extra draws, and just kind of, like, just chain a bunch of these spells and hit your opponent for huge attacks. And when you don't have that, you just kind of get stagnant with.
Yeah, also big that card
Arcanists that
came
don't do
later.
anything.
Like, the Virtuoso came, like, a bit too late. Had that been played earlier, you could be conniving there. You can find yourself a couple more spells, and the game probably looks very different.
We'll see a Clifftop Retreat coming in on turn 1. I don't agree with this hand being kept, but they must not have a turn 1 play, probably having a Virtuoso in hand. As we see an Evolving
Yeah, they're
Wilds
probably
come
sitting
in.
on a bunch of 2s. Or, like...
Or Arcanist,
I don't know, maybe
guess.
they now go, like... on double 1. We see the Plains. I assume that Plains was top deck.
Swift
Why
Spear?
not play it on turn 1 otherwise? But...
Yeah.
Well, unless they were hoping to like draw a mountain because they had a bunch of red spells in hand, that could be possible.
Yeah,
They'd be sitting on like mountain, plains retreat, but they're like, I don't have a turn 1 play because I don't have an untapped red source on turn 1, and if I top deck a mountain, I wish I had played the tapped red source.
So we're gonna do this again. We have Elvish Reclaimer, not on turn 1, but on turn 2. Still a really cool card. 2 lands away from getting its buff, but the downside is it doesn't get buffed out of range of Reckless Rage, so it still dies to that pretty easily. And we see an Arcanist come down, which a little lackluster. I mean, they're setting up. That's what Boros does for the first turn or two. But
yeah, assuming
no
they
attacks.
are actually holding a removal spell this time, like a protection spell. This is
ooh, Blast Zone. That's really cool in this deck.
Does kill the Reclaimer too, so not brilliant right
True.
now, but even something you could tick up. Like if you see your opponent here go for like a Virtuoso or like another Arcanist, could theoretically just be ticked up to 2. Right? Just take the scariest card of the field.
Seems pretty good.
The 1-mana prowess creatures, like they're strong obviously, but they're not the type of thing that makes them go over the top. But here we see Defiant Strike, and it's like one of these key cards in the deck because they now got the Defiant Strike.
You want to be able to chain
now you
things.
Arcanist, get another Defiant Strike, so this basically turned into a 1-mana draw 2 that also gave you 2 prowess triggers and 2 power on your Arcanist, which is just phenomenal.
And they might target the Arcanist here to just make their blocks a bit, or the blocks a bit worse. Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, the only thing here is, now I'm going to assume there's another pump spell here, because what you can do is now declare the Reclaimer as a blocker, activate the Reclaimer, and then it becomes a 3/4, which kills the Arcanist.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm safely assuming that there will be an answer to that from the
So we don't do that. They're just going to take it, try and hold on to this Reclaimer, and I guess pump up the Blast Zone here. So we saw nothing else. 5 cards in hand, 3 open mana. Seems weird that no other creatures came down. Like, are they flooding a bit? Holding up like 3 protection spells?
Yeah, it could be a couple protection spells. Maybe they're sitting on 2 protection spell, 2 Reckless Rage or something. I can imagine after that game 1, you might get a little bit psyched into keeping a bunch of the removal spells that kill the Dreadshade.
Now we have another Blast Zone. So, very interesting about Blast Zone, though, is you can't use protection spells now because they're colorless. So God's Willing doesn't work. So unless you have something like Fight as one in your deck, as you see a Reckless Rage, take care of this Elvish Reclaimer. Which actually isn't that bad because now you can comfortably pop off your 1 mana one if you want. If they play another Hoplite or something, to where you don't have to worry about killing your own Reclaimer. But yeah, they can't protect themselves unless they have indestructible spells from the Blast Zones.
There's something to be said for keeping the Reclaimer alive and sort of not wanting them to pop it on 1. But on the other hand, if you make it tempting to use now, that might mean maybe their hand is a bunch of 1-drops, right? And they were aiming for this. That they're gonna pop the Blast Zone and then they can safely get the 1-drops in.
Okay, we see a pump. And they're immediately taking care of the Arcanist here. They don't want to, have them do anything else. So Arcanist is taken care of. And now maybe we see some more 2-drops come in, forcing your opponent to pump up Blast Zone again, put them turned behind. And if they have enough, spells in hand, then maybe they can start doing a chain again. Invigorated Rampage, so that's going to hit them for 7?
Yeah,
down to 5.
I'm not sure what to make of that early Blast Zone usage, because it kills the Arcanist, but it sets you down a land. Right, and these kind of playing another 1-drop into it. At this point, with them having one spell up, I can see just popping the Blast Zone here. I might even pop it now, just to reduce the chance that they drop something for it. At this point, you're realizing you're behind in lands, you've set yourself back a land, but the Boros deck really has an issue that once all the creatures are dealt with, it can just draw non-functional cards for 5 turns in a row.
And here's the pop of the Blast Zone, beginning of combat.
Not sure how much I like giving my opponent an extra draw with a protection spell here.
Do they have the Fighters one here?
No,
Is that Godzilla? No.
Well,
no.
I can... No. They're absolutely just playing this for the scry. Because they know they're losing all their creatures, and they're just trying to find a creature. Because, like, you can't even give pro white versus a, like, Supreme Verdict, right? I'm sure the Heroic player knows that, like, this type of effect you can't use protection for. And this is even a colorless effect, so even if you do have protection on colorless, it won't work. Yeah, so nothing here now.
But this, okay, then why no grab Gigantha? Because you could play Gigantha right now.
Yeah,
you have all the open mana and one card in hand.
That's probably just a mistake.
Hoplite. So now there is a reason for them to not want to... Now you don't feel as bad playing into this Blast Zone because they have a 1-drop themselves.
Yeah, they've missed a land drop, so if they now... Well, they've get it back now, but... You know, if you would have popped the Blast Zone here, you would have lost your creature and your land. You're not really progressing your game state, which means you're giving the Boros player the time to find a new creature. But they, again, did not put Gigantha in their hands, so...
I wonder what's in the Golgari player's hand. They have 5 cards. It's just a bunch of lands?
Could be a bunch of expensive spells, right? Given the type of deck that it is, this is definitely the kind of deck where you're
probably...
go for a grapple
with the
with
past.
the past.
I like that. Okay, so they can get a creature or a land. There's a Dread Presence they hit. They grab a Blast Zone from the yard. And then pop off Evolving Wilds. Okay. So get another Blast Zone.
Looking for double green, apparently. Otherwise, there's not much of a reason to go for the Evolving Wilds crack when you've got Dread Presence in your hand.
Another Elvish Reclaimer. So they've gotten Tron with both the Reclaimers and their Blast Zones this game. Getting in for 3.
I mean, 4 Blast Zones is just nasty if you can play against the Heroic deck. Especially if they keep forgetting to play a 5/5.
Here's, again, Virtuoso coming down way too late. But you still have them at 6. Their Blast Zones haven't pumped up yet. So you Homestead Courage. Is this the one from Graveyard that's being flashbacked? Yes. Yeah. They need another pump spell to get over this Reclaimer so they don't just have a pillow fight. But again, we see the issue with Heroic being that they can run out of steam pretty quickly. But there's another Homestead Courage. So here's the thing. Do they overextend and just do it again from flashback?
No, I think this already warrants a block. Right? It's a 5/6. Any spell targeting this. So this either warrants a block or a Blast Zone activation. Which I would be tempted to not block, and if they go for a pump spell, I might then activate Blast Zone, but that might be a little risky. So I can see
a block and Blast Zone, so they're losing both Elvish Reclaimers here.
And the Virtuoso sticks around with a Homestead Courage in the yard. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that. So if there's now like a God's Willing in there, I mean, they can pump up the Blast Zone, but like even the Homestead Courage alone and conniving a spell means the Virtuoso's attacking for lethal. But there might just be a bunch of fatal pushes in their hand at this point.
They can also grab Gigantha to have as pitch fodder to the connive to guarantee a trigger. Another Reclaimer. So that makes that Blast Zone activation make a bit more sense now. So now they can chump block unless they have... I mean, it is double strike, but they can theoretically chump if they don't get it super big. Let's see Homestead Courage come in. We see a Connive trigger. Let's see what they get rid of. Then they can pump up to 2 on Blast Zone and take care of the Virtuoso next turn. But this might be a tad bit too slow for Golgari. So they pitch a Homestead Courage, flash back the one they pitched. Okay. We see Assassin's Trophy. Okay, do you have the Gods Willing? No.
Oh.
Oof. Well, there's the basic mountain you were wondering if they had. Okay, now you grab Giganta. Okay, favorite hot play, 3 of mana, 1 card in hand. You didn't have a protection spell. Why are they not? Do they not remember that they have Giganta?
I'm pretty sure they've simply forgotten.
Dread Presence. No protect spell, we know that, so you can kind of
Urborg, Legends rule it just because they want to get rid of the hoplite. Very good.
Yep.
Absolutely worth it. Now they can get in with the...
Put it out of range.
Yeah, this seems to be somewhat putting the game away. I feel like
I'm really interested in seeing the list for Golgari.
I feel like at this point the heroic player could have played it a little cleaner.
Yeah, there are a couple instances where they could have grabbed Giganta.
Yeah, there just seems to be like
that.
some level of it's not like other than granted Giganta, not like outright misplays, but just things where maybe there's like a better way to sequence these things.
Did they just ping themselves the Painland? They have an open mountain.
Yes.
Cool. Big brain plays. And Fatal Push.
Maybe they didn't want to be hit by that Hidetsuku card that does 10 damage to a player who's on 10.
And we see another Urborg.
Another Urborg Legend rule just for the trigger on the Dread Presence.
And in a scoop immediately. Wow.
I mean, I loved seeing the Golgari deck, and I honestly feel like the Boros player didn't have the cleanest play.
No.
I think the Golgari player generally did. I thought some of the Blast Zone usage might have been a little proactive, especially if you're missing your land drops, but it did pay off in the end. But they definitely like missing land drops, quite a few, in a deck that I assume has a high land count. Like these type of decks generally do. So... this Golgari deck still looked like pretty sweet. Like, as you know, maybe not see it as like a highlight of the Boros deck, but more of a highlight of like how cool this Golgari deck was. And honestly, when you saw that in game 1, the Dread Presence came down, looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, and I'm really interested in seeing the full list from Golgari. Like, is that a Scapeship list that we just never saw? It feels like it could be. That seems like a great home for it.
Feels like it should be.
Reminds me that we have Scapeshift in the format, and ever since Field of the Dead got banned, we haven't really seen it. And I know that, Dread Presence is like one of the only cards that really cares about that, besides like other landfall stuff. But like as far as like a combo that potentially kills your opponent, is there really anything else in the format that's just landfall ping your opponent for?
But this just goes brilliantly with Lotus Cobra too. Like that even could allow you to play like 2 Scape Shifts in a row. Just Scape Shift, get the landfall triggers for mana, Scape Shift again. So like you could do some pretty gnarly things with that together with Dread Presence. Obviously Dread Presence, it's a 4 mana 3/3, so it dies. It's very inefficiently statted. But I think there's like some interesting build around potential, especially because that deal 2 damage can hit creatures. So you look at the humans deck at the moment, has a lot of creatures that either just have 2 toughness or, obviously start on 2 toughness. There's multiple ways in the deck to grow your creatures. But, like, in a meta like that, if you can even manage, like, even though something like Reflector Mage can exist, if you manage to just go, like, Dreadshade, play a Fabled Passage, gain 4 life, shoot 2 of your things, that is the type of play that can really, like, start put a game away if you back it up with some removal already.
Yeah, I agree. Like,
by the way, it wasn't a Scapeshift list because Scapeshift is double green in the mana cost and Giganta.
Oh,
I'm fairly sure that Scapeshift does. So,
though I will say with the Dread Presence, it's not as awkwardly, like as far as its toughness and goes, like being a 3/3, where it pairs up with a lot of the removal in Pioneer. We don't have Bolt and Lightning Strike isn't really played much in mono red, for that matter. Usually like a 2-of if it is. And sure, there's stuff out of the sideboard like Lava Coil and things like that as far as damage-based removal, but a lot of it is reliant on like Fatal Push, and we don't really see Fatal Push being revolted as easily.
I mean, if they play your Dread Presence and immediately shoot something, that's your revolt.
True. That's true.
I think it's fine, right? There's matchups where it's going to be good. There's matchups where it's going to be atrocious. That's just generally how these type of deck goes. But you can find other game plans. I mean, just imagine if you're even in Golgari colors alone and you cast Escape Shift and you just find 5-man lands. Like, you're just...
Yeah.
Nice removal you got there as you pull up like 3 Hive of the Eye Tyrants and 2 Hydra's Lairs, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I think the build around potential with this is really cool and interesting. Yeah, I want to see the list. Maybe Scape Shift is just too weirdly to say win more, because you kind of have to get to that point.
Yeah, it's going to depend on what your goal is. If you're trying to beat up fair decks, Scape Shift is that kind of over-the-top card. If you're duking it out with a lot of like control-y decks or like these like very removal-heavy mid-rangey lists, then like generally Scape Shift with nothing on the board. Like sure, grabbing like 5-man lands can be like a really cool play, but it's probably not where you want to be. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to combo it with something, I think Scape Shift's very desirable. If you're trying to like play a fair game plan, you know, we saw Field of Ruin, Ramming Up Excavator. Your long-term game plan versus something like Control or Rep like mid-range can be to literally just Stone Rain them out of the game. Like, we saw Field of Ruin, Ramming Up Excavator, Assassin's Trophy. Like, I've built something like this, where the whole goal is to just strip your opponent down to their basics, and then Assassin's Trophy their basics. Like, and in something like Blue-White Control, that is a slow deck, and just needs some lands to keep going. If you Field of Ruin them on turn 2, like on turn 3, and they don't grab a basic, you're like, okay, I know what my game plan's going to be.
This is why we need Armageddon in the format, Alex.
Yeah, so they can do it back to us. You know, you're Stone Raining your blue-white player, and they're like, screw you, and they just Armageddon you back. Well, I think Armageddon would be garbage anyway in the format. So.
Oh, I actually probably agree.
Just print it.
I'd rather have...
Do it.
Yeah. I'm curious.
Cowards.
But that's going to do it here for us today on this episode of Questionable Commentary. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Small click from you. Takes 2 seconds. Goes a long way in helping us grow the channel. Of course, I'm Brad. This is Brad Siffer. This is Alex. We are from the Pioneer Perspective. If you want to find episodes there to listen to us ramble about more things Pioneer, go ahead and look at the link down in the description. Check that out. And of course, there's other stuff there. Merch, Patreon, all that good stuff. Any support goes a long way. Like I said, we appreciate you. And if you want any suggestions or have any suggestions for like matchups you want to see as far as paper Magic is concerned, because we will be recording more of those to commentate over, or we can always get people to actually go into lobbies and private games and find some suitable pilots for MTGO. Let us know what you want to see. What decks you want to see us commentate over? What do you want to see like in Pioneer? What are you interested in? But again, thank you so much for watching. You guys are the best, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye-bye, everyone.